Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the observation window of her small salvage ship and looked out at the biggest pile of garbage in the known universe. The graveyard of empires stretched out before her, millions of kilometers of broken ships, failed machines, and thrown-away technology floating in the cold darkness of space. 100 different alien civilizations had been dumping their junk here for 10,000 years. To them, it was worthless. To Elena, it was the only chance humanity had to survive. 3 months ago, humanity had finally been allowed to join the Galactic Concord. It should have been a moment of celebration. After centuries of dreaming about the stars, humans had finally proven they were smart enough to travel between them. The alien races had welcomed them with polite smiles and empty promises. They gave humanity 1 vote in the Great Assembly, 1 license to trade, and 1 small moon in the most worthless corner of the galaxy. They also gave them the graveyard. The other species thought it was funny. The young humans, so eager and so naive, had been handed a garbage dump and told it was a gift. The Threxians laughed in their deep, rumbling voices. The Valkyrie made cruel jokes in their clicking language. Even the usually kind Orani shook their heads with pity. Poor humans. They had no great warships. They had no powerful weapons. They had nothing but dreams and determination. And the galaxy had learned long ago that dreams meant nothing against plasma cannons. Elena turned away from the window and walked through the narrow corridors of her ship. The Persistence. It was a small vessel, barely big enough for her crew of 47. Most of them were engineers, scientists, and salvage experts. They had been sent here to find anything useful, sell it for credits, and send money back to the struggling human colonies. It was not a glorious mission. It was a desperate one. She found Dr. Marcus Chen in the main cargo bay, surrounded by pieces of alien technology. Marcus was her chief engineer, a genius who had been kicked out of 3 universities for refusing to follow rules. He had wild black hair that he never combed, dark circles under his eyes from never sleeping, and a smile that appeared whenever he found something interesting. Right now that smile was very wide. "Elena," he said without looking up, "come look at this." She walked over to where he was kneeling beside a cracked metal cylinder covered in strange symbols. "What is it?" "A Valkyrie power coupling. It is supposed to be completely destroyed. They threw it away because it had a small crack in the outer shell." Marcus held it up to the light. "But the core is perfect. The energy conversion matrix is still intact." Lena did not understand half of what Marcus said on a good day. "Can we sell it?" "Sell it?" Marcus looked at her like she had suggested they eat it. "Elena, this is a Valkyrie Mark 7 coupling. It can channel more power than our entire ship produces." And over there he pointed to a pile of twisted metal in the corner. "I found 3 Threxian shield generators. They are old, but they still work. And yesterday we pulled in an Orani navigation crystal that someone threw away because it had a tiny scratch on the surface." Elena began to understand. "They threw away good equipment." "They threw away perfect equipment," Marcus corrected. "The Threxians build a new model every 50 years and throw away the old ones. The Valkyrie consider anything with a scratch to be defective." "The Orani," he laughed, shaking his head. "The Orani threw away a navigation system that could plot a course through a black hole cluster because the color was slightly wrong." Elena looked around the cargo bay at the growing piles of alien technology. "So we have valuable salvage. That is good. We can sell it and feed our people." Marcus stood up and grabbed her arm, his eyes shining with excitement that she had learned to be nervous about. "No, Elena, you do not understand. Look at what we have here. Power systems from the Valkyrie. Shields from the Threxians. Navigation from the Orani. Weapons from the Gerati. Engines from the Sketh. We have pieces from every advanced civilization in the galaxy, and they all work." "They work separately," Elena said. "Alien technologies do not mix. Everyone knows that." "Everyone knows that because no one has ever tried," Marcus replied. "The Threxians would never put Valkyrie tech in their ships. It would be an insult to their engineering pride. The Valkyrie would die before using Sketh engines. The galaxy has spent 10,000 years keeping their technologies pure and separate." Lena felt a strange feeling growing in her chest. It was hope, and hope was dangerous. What are you saying, Marcus? He walked to his computer terminal and pulled up a holographic display. It showed a ship, but not like any ship Alina had ever seen. It was rough, ugly, a patchwork of different metals and different designs. It looked like something a child would draw. I am saying that we can build this, Marcus said. A ship with Valkyrie power, Threxian shields, Orani navigation, Gerati weapons, and Sketh engines. A ship that combines the best technology of every species in the galaxy. That is impossible. The systems would not work together. They would tear each other apart. Marcus smiled his most dangerous smile. I know. Is that not wonderful? No one has ever tried because everyone knows it is impossible. But I have been looking at these systems for weeks, Alina. They are not as different as everyone believes. With the right adapters, the right modifications, the right amount of creativity, the right amount of insanity, Alina interrupted. That too, Marcus agreed happily. We can build something that no one has ever seen before. Something that breaks every rule of engineering. Something that should not exist. His voice dropped to a whisper. Something that could protect our people. Alina thought about the human colonies, struggling to survive on their one small moon. She thought about the alien fleets that could destroy them whenever they wanted. She thought about the laughter of the Threxians and the pity of the Orani. Then she looked at the holographic ship design, ugly and impossible and beautiful. The Concord will never allow it, she said. The Concord gave us a junkyard and forgot about us, Marcus replied. They will not even look in our direction for years. By the time anyone notices what we are doing, it will be too late. Lena made her decision. It was probably a mistake. It was probably suicide. But humanity had not survived this long by playing it safe. What do you need? She asked. Marcus handed her a datapad with a very long list. Everything on this? Plus about 50 engineers who do not mind breaking the laws of physics. And maybe a lot of coffee. Elena looked at the list and sighed. I will see what I can do. As she walked away, Marcus called after her. We are going to change everything, Elena. The galaxy looks at us and sees nothing. They gave us their garbage because they thought we were garbage too. He picked up the cracked Valkyrie power coupling and held it like it was made of gold. We are going to show them how wrong they are. Alina did not answer, but as she climbed to the command deck to call for more crew, she allowed herself to hope. The galaxy had given humanity its trash. Perhaps it was time to show them what humans could build from broken things. 18 months passed in the graveyard of empires, and the crew of the Persistence worked like they had never worked before. Word had spread quietly through the human colonies that something important was happening in the junkyard. Engineers arrived first, then scientists, then mechanics, then anyone with skills and a dream of something better. The small salvage crew of 47 grew to 200, then 300, then 500 people living in a growing network of connected ships and makeshift stations. They called their project the Patchwork. And every day it looked more impossible. Alina stood on the construction platform and watched her people work. Below her, the skeleton of the ship was taking shape. It was massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built, and it was ugly in a way that made her proud. The hull was made from pieces of 30 different alien ships, welded together in patterns that made no logical sense. Silver Threxian metal sat next to green Valkyrie alloy. Golden Orani crystal was embedded beside dark Sketh composite. It looked like a mistake. It looked like madness. It looked like hope. Marcus had not slept properly in 6 months. His eyes were red, his hands shook from too much coffee, and his smile had not faded for even a moment. He moved between work teams like a ghost, solving problems that should not have solutions, connecting systems that should not connect. When the Valkyrie power core refused to talk to the Threxian distribution grid, he invented a new type of adapter. When the Orani navigation crystals rejected every input from foreign systems, he spent 3 weeks writing translation software from scratch. It cannot be done, his engineers would say. Then stop trying to do it the right way, Marcus would answer. Try the wrong way instead. The wrong way worked surprisingly often. The weapons team faced the biggest challenge. The Jurati railguns were simple, kinetic weapons that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. The Sketh plasma cannons were energy weapons that turned matter into superheated death. The two systems required completely different power inputs, completely different targeting systems, and completely different cooling mechanisms. Every engineering manual in the galaxy said they could not be mounted on the same ship. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, the weapons chief, solved the problem by ignoring the engineering manuals completely. She built a weapon platform that could switch between systems in less than a second. When one weapon type overheated, the platform would turn and present fresh weapons. When the power core was producing the right frequency, the plasma cannons would fire. When it shifted to a different frequency, the railguns would take over. It was crude. It was complicated. It worked. The shield system was even stranger. Threxian shields were designed to absorb energy weapons. Valkyrie shields were designed to deflect kinetic impacts. Orani shields were designed to confuse targeting systems. No ship had ever tried to run all three at once because the interference patterns would tear the ship apart. Marcus found a way to rotate them. The shield generators would switch between types 50 times per second, creating a flickering barrier that was never the same type for long enough to be countered. The math said it would cause a cascade failure. Marcus adjusted the math until it agreed with him. 6 months before the ship was finished, they received their first visitor. High Auditor Vexton of the Threxian Engineering Council arrived on a routine inspection tour. He was supposed to make sure the humans were following salvage regulations. He was not supposed to find anything interesting. The graveyard was boring. Humans were boring. This was supposed to be an easy assignment. He stepped off his shuttle and stopped moving. His 4 eyes went very wide. His blue skin turned a shade of pale that Alina had never seen on a Threxian before. "What?" he said very slowly. "Is that?" Alina tried to block his view of the patchwork. It did not work. The ship was too big to hide. "A salvage project," she said. "That is not a salvage project." Vexen pushed past her and walked toward the construction platform. His eyes moved across the hall, identifying different technologies, different species, different design philosophies all smashed together. "That is an abomination. That is a crime against engineering. That is..." He stopped, his mouth hanging open. "Is that a Valkyrie Mark 7 coupling connected to a Threxian power grid?" "Yes," Marcus said, appearing beside them with a cup of coffee. "It took me 2 months to make the adapter. You cannot connect those systems. The power frequencies are incompatible. The feedback would cause a catastrophic explosion," Marcus agreed. "So I built a frequency converter that shifts the output 17 times per second. The systems think they are talking to their own species. They never notice the difference." Vexton ran the calculations in his head. Then he pulled out a computing device and ran them again. Then he sat down heavily on a cargo container because his legs would not hold him anymore. "That should not work," he whispered. "I know," Marcus said happily, "but it does." The High Auditor spent 3 days on the construction platform. He examined every system, every connection, every impossible solution that the human engineers had created. He found 47 violations of Threxian engineering standards. He found 32 violations of Valkyrie manufacturing codes. He found at least 100 violations of basic physics. None of it mattered because everything worked. On the 4th day, Vexen requested a private meeting with Alina. They sat in her small office aboard the Persistence, and the Threxian looked at her with an expression she could not read. "I should report this," he said. "The Concord would be very interested to know what you are building." Alina's hand moved toward the emergency button under her desk. "And will you?" Vexen was quiet for a long moment. "I have been an engineer for 200 years, he said finally. "I have followed the rules of my people without question. I have built perfect ships using perfect methods. And I have never, in all my years, seen anything like what your people are doing here." He leaned forward, and Alina saw something in his eyes that surprised her. It was not anger or disgust. It was wonder. "You are building the impossible," Vexton said. "You are combining technologies that should not combine. You are solving problems that should not have solutions. You are breaking every rule I have ever known. and I want to help." Alina stared at him. "Why?" The Threxian made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Because in 200 years, I have never been this excited about engineering. Because your Dr. Chen has done things that I did not believe could be done. Because he hesitated. Because you were showing us something we forgot. Something important. And what is that?" Vexton looked out the window at the patchwork, ugly and magnificent against the stars. "That the rules exist to be broken. That impossible only means no one has tried hard enough." He turned back to Alina. "Let me help you. Let me be part of this." Alina thought for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Welcome to the team, High Auditor." Vexton's formal report to the Concord stated that the humans were engaged in standard salvage operations. Nothing interesting. Nothing worth investigating. The Concord filed the report and forgot about it. Meanwhile, in the graveyard of empires, the patchwork grew closer to completion. An impossible ship built by impossible dreamers. Getting ready to change the galaxy forever, the Kethari Dominion had been watching humanity for a long time. They were an old species, powerful and cruel, and they had built their empire on a simple belief: the strong take what they want from the weak. For 3,000 years, they had conquered and enslaved their way across the galaxy. The Galactic Concord tolerated them because fighting them would be too expensive. And now, they had decided that humanity looked like an easy target. Warlord Sithrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Hunger, and looked at the tactical display showing Haven Colony. It was the largest human settlement. Home to 2 million people living on a small moon that the Concord had given them like a bone thrown to a dog. The humans had 6 old frigates defending them. 6 tiny ships against his invasion fleet of 12 dreadnoughts and 40 support vessels. This would not even be a battle. It would be a message. "Open a channel," Sithrak commanded. His voice was deep and cold, like stones grinding together. "Let them hear their fate." His communications officer obeyed, and Sithrak spoke to the human colony. "People of Haven, I am Warlord Sithrak of the Kethari Dominion. You have 1 hour to surrender completely. All humans will become property of the Dominion. You will work for us. You will serve us. You will exist only because we allow it." Paused, letting the words sink in. "If you do not surrender, we will burn your colony to ash and take the survivors anyway. The choice is yours." He cut the channel and smiled. The Kethari did not really smile, but their mouths could twist in a way that suggested pleasure. Sithrak felt pleasure now. Conquering was always enjoyable, but conquering the young and helpless was especially satisfying. These humans would learn their place in the galaxy. They would learn it in chains. "Warlord," his sensor officer said suddenly. "We are detecting a hyperspace signature. Something is coming. One of their frigates running away?" Sithrak did not even turn around. Cowardice was expected from weak species. "No, Warlord. It is ... I do not know what it is." That made Sithrak turn around. His sensor officers were the best in the Dominion. They knew every ship type in the galaxy. For one of them to admit confusion was unusual. The hyperspace window opened, and something emerged. Something that made no sense. The patchwork dropped into normal space like a nightmare-given form. It was huge, almost as big as a Kethari dreadnought, but it looked like nothing Sithrak had ever seen. Its hull was a mess of different metals, different colors, different designs. Weapons bristled from its surface in random patterns. Its engines glowed with 3 different types of light at once. "What is that thing?" Sithrak demanded. "Unknown, Warlord. Our computers cannot classify it. It appears to be made from pieces of many different species. Threxian, Valkyrie, Orani, Gerati, Sketh, at least a dozen others." The sensor officer's voice was confused and worried. This should not be possible. These technologies do not work together. On the bridge of the patchwork, Commander Elena Vasquez sat in her captain's chair and felt completely calm. Beside her, Marcus was checking system readouts with the excitement of a child on his birthday. Lieutenant Tanaka was running final weapons diagnostics. High Auditor Vexton, who had insisted on coming along, was watching the Kethari fleet with all 4 of his eyes. 12 dreadnoughts, Elena said. 40 support ships. We are outnumbered badly, Yes, Marcus agreed happily. Is it not wonderful? Alina opened a channel to the Cathari flagship, Warlord Sithrak. This is Commander Alina Vasquez of the human warship Patchwork. You will leave the system immediately. Haven Colony is under our protection. Sithrak's laugh echoed through the bridge. Protection? You bring one ugly ship against my fleet and call that protection? Human, you are either very brave or very stupid. I think you are stupid. He cut the channel and gave the order. All ships, destroy that thing. Then we take the colony. 12 dreadnoughts and 40 support vessels. Opened fire at once. The Patchwork moved. It should not have been able to move that fast. Ships that size were slow and heavy. But the Patchwork had Sketh engines modified by human engineers who did not care about the rules. It twisted sideways, rolling and spinning in ways that made the Cathari gunners blink in surprise. Plasma beams cut through empty space where the ship had been a second before. Shield rotation active, Vexton reported. His voice was amazed despite himself. The flickering pattern is confusing their targeting systems. They cannot get a lock. Return fire, Lena commanded. Lieutenant Tanaka smiled and pressed the firing controls. The Girardi railguns spoke first. They were old weapons, simple kinetic guns that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. No one used railguns anymore because energy shields stopped them easily. But Cathari shields were designed to stop plasma and laser weapons. They were not designed for solid metal hitting them at a significant fraction of light speed. The first slug punched through the shields of a Cathari dreadnought and kept going. It tore through 3 decks before exiting the other side of the ship. The second and third slugs followed, ripping the vessel apart from the inside. Then the Sketh plasma cannons fired through the holes in the shields, and the dreadnought exploded. One down, Tanaka reported calmly. Sithrak watched his ship die, felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. This was not possible. One ship could not destroy a dreadnought so easily. One ship could not dance between the fire of his entire fleet. One ship could not be winning, but the Patchwork was winning. It moved through the Cathari, its formation like a predator among prey. The Orani navigation system processed threat data faster than any Cathari computer could understand. It knew where every shot would be before it was fired. It found paths through the chaos that should not have existed. And every time the Patchwork fired, something died. A second dreadnought fell to a combination of railgun slugs and plasma fire. A third was crippled when the Patchwork flew beneath it and fired straight up through its engineering section. A fourth tried to ram the human ship and missed completely. Then took a spread of missiles directly to its bridge. 19 minutes after the battle began, Sithrak gave an order he had never given before. All ships, retreat. Get us out of here. The Cathari fleet ran. They engaged their hyperspace drives and fled, leaving behind the burning wreckage of 4 dreadnoughts and 7 support vessels. They ran from a single ship crewed by a species they had called weak and helpless. Alina watched them go and allowed herself to breathe. Damage report, she said. Minor hull damage 2. Sections 7 and 12, Vexton replied. Shield generators 3 and 5 need maintenance. We lost 2 railgun batteries to overheating. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was shaking. Commander, we just defeated a Cathari invasion fleet. We lost nothing important. They lost everything. He could not stop laughing. The impossible ship had done the impossible thing, and now everything would change. Alina opened a channel to Haven Colony. Haven, this is Commander Vasquez. The Cathari are gone. You are safe. The response came through filled with static and tears. Patchwork. We saw everything. We do not know how to thank you. We do not know what to say. Alina looked at her crew, at the ugly, beautiful ship they had built from garbage and dreams. You do not need to say anything. Just remember this day. Remember that we built this ship from things they threw away. She smiled. And we are just getting started. The news of Haven spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. The humans had won. The impossible had happened. And nothing would ever be the same again. The story of Haven spread through the galactic concord like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every species in known space had heard what happened. A single human ship, built from garbage and spare parts, had defeated a Cathari invasion fleet. 4 dreadnoughts destroyed. 7 support vessels turned to wreckage. The most feared military power in the galaxy had run away from a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel a century ago. No, one believed it at first. The reports had to be wrong. The recordings had to be faked. Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Humans had no technology, no experience, no power. They could not possibly have one. Then the Cathari confirmed it was true, and the galaxy went into shock. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Concord and felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. She was Marcus Chen's younger sister, a diplomat who had spent years learning how to speak to aliens without causing offense. Today, she did not care about causing offense. Today, she had a message to deliver. The assembly hall was enormous. A great dome filled with representatives from 100 species. The Threxians sat in their section, their blue skin dark with concentration. The Valkyrie clicked and chittered among themselves, their insect-like bodies twitching with nervous energy. The Orani floated in their water tanks, their crystal-filled bodies glowing with soft light. And in a dark corner, the remaining Cathari ambassador sat alone, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Honored members of the Concord, Sarah began, her voice carrying across the silent hall. 3 days ago, Cathari Dominion sent 52 warships to conquer our colony at Haven. They expected to find easy victims. They expected to add another slave race to their empire. They expected weakness. She paused, letting the silence build. They were wrong. Murmurs ran through the assembly. The Threxian High Council whispered among themselves. The Valkyrie trademasters leaned forward with sudden interest. 1 ship, Sarah continued. We sent 1 ship to defend 2 million human lives. A ship that your engineers say should not exist. A ship built from the technology you threw away because you did not want it anymore. She smiled, and there was steel in that smile. You gave us garbage. We turned it into a weapon that your best military minds cannot understand. The Cathari ambassador made a sound of protest, but no words came out. What could he say? His people had lost. They had lost badly. How? Demanded High Engineer Threxinol of the Threxian Council. Our engineers have examined the sensor readings from the battle. The systems on that ship should not work together. The power frequencies are incompatible. The navigation protocols conflict. The weapon systems require completely different operating parameters. By every law of physics and engineering, that ship should tear itself apart. Sarah's smile grew wider. And yet it does not. Perhaps your laws need updating. The hall erupted. Representatives shouted questions, demands, accusations. The Threxians wanted to examine the ship. The Valkyrie wanted to buy the technology. The Orani wanted to understand how their navigation crystals had been modified. Everyone wanted something. Sarah raised her hand for silence, and slowly the noise faded.
Ow!
We did not come here to sell our technology, she said. We did not come here to explain our methods. We came here to deliver a simple message. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of every species in turn. You underestimated us. You gave us worthless territory and expected us to fail. You laughed at our ships, our technology, our dreams. You threw away your old equipment and expected us to struggle with the scraps. She stepped forward, and her voice dropped to something cold and hard. Thank you. The word hung in the air like a blade. Thank you for teaching us that we could only depend on ourselves. Thank you for forcing us to be creative, to think differently, to solve problems that your engineers said were unsolvable. Thank you for giving us the pieces of 100 civilizations and assuming we were too stupid to put them together. Sarah turned to look directly at the Cathari ambassador. And thank you, Warlord Sithrak, for testing our creation. We were not sure if it would work. You helped us prove that it does. Ambassador said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the floor. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy tried to understand what had happened. The Threxians sent their best engineers to study the recordings of the battle. The Valkyrie ran thousands of simulations trying to replicate the human approach. The Orani meditated on the philosophical implications of technology that broke all known rules. Their conclusions were unanimous and troubling. The patchwork could not be copied. Not by them. Not using their methods. The human ship worked because of thousands of tiny modifications, countless small adaptations, innumerable patches and fixes that alien engineers would never have thought to try. Each individual change was simple. Together, they created something entirely new. They do not think like us. High Engineer Threxenol admitted to the Threxian Council. We optimize. We perfect. We follow the established paths because we know they work. The humans do not care about established paths. They make their own. High Auditor Vexen, who had returned to Threxia as a changed being, spoke to the council with unusual passion. I watched them build that ship. They failed constantly. They tried things that could not work, and when those things did not work, they tried other things that could not work. But sometimes, those impossible solutions succeeded. Sometimes they found answers that we would never have found because we would never have asked the questions. The Velkari trade masters calculated the economic implications and did not like the numbers. If humans could build warships from garbage, what could they build with actual resources? If they could defeat the Kethari with one ship, what could they do with 10? With 100? The Orani saw something different. They were a philosophical species, more interested in meaning than in power. And they saw meaning in what the humans had done. They did not break the rules, the Orani speaker said in the assembly. They simply refused to believe that the rules were complete. They looked at what we had declared impossible and asked why. And when we could not give them a good answer, they proved us wrong. Humanity was no longer a joke. Humanity was no longer a young species to be pitied and patronized. Humanity was something new, something dangerous, something that did not fit neatly into the categories. The galaxy had created over 10,000 years. Ambassador Sarah Chen requested a final audience with the Grand Assembly. When she spoke, her words were careful and deliberate. The patchwork was our first ship, she said. Built from your garbage, crewed by engineers who refused to accept limits, it was a prototype. An experiment. A proof that we could do what you said was impossible. She looked around the hall at 100 species who were finally paying attention. We are building more ships now. Better ships. Ships that combine your technologies in ways you have not imagined. Ships that will protect human colonies from anyone who thinks we are easy targets. Her eyes found the Cathari ambassador. We remember our friends. We also remember our enemies. The ambassador flinched. But we did not come here to threaten you, Sarah continued. We came here to offer something. Partnership, cooperation, the chance to learn from each other instead of fighting. She smiled, and this time the smile was warm. You have spent 10,000 years perfecting your technologies. You have achieved amazing things. But you have also stopped growing. You have stopped trying new ideas because you believe you have found all the answers. She spread her hands, a gesture of openness. We have not found any answers yet. We are still looking. And maybe, if we work together, we can find answers that none of us could find alone. The Grand Assembly voted the next day. Humanity was granted full membership in the Concord, with all the rights and privileges that came with it. They were given better territory, better trade agreements, better everything. But more importantly, for the first time in 10,000 years, the established powers of the galaxy looked at a young species and felt something they had forgotten was possible. They felt hope. 3 years passed, and the galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. Human engineers worked alongside Threxian designers. Human scientists collaborated with Awareney philosophers. Human merchants traded with Velkari masters. The species that had once been laughed at was now respected, feared, and sought after as partners. But not everyone was happy with the new order. Warlord Sithrak had spent 3 years rebuilding his reputation. The defeat at Haven had been a stain on his honor, a humiliation that burned in his heart every single day. He had conquered 12 systems since then, crushed rebellions, destroyed enemies, but none of it mattered. Everyone still remembered that he had run from a single human ship now, standing on the bridge of his new flagship, the Undying Wrath. he was ready to correct that mistake. "Status report," he commanded. "All ships ready." "Warlord," his fleet commander replied. 150 capital ships? Full combat readiness. The largest fleet the Dominion has ever assembled. Struck smiled his cold smile. This time, there would be no retreat. This time, the humans would learn that the Cathari were still the masters of war. He had brought enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. One system of upstart primates would not stand against him. "Set course for Haven," he ordered. "Maximum speed. We end this today." The Cathari armada moved through hyperspace like a wave of death. 150 vessels, hungry for revenge, Commander. Lena Vasquez received the warning 6 hours before the enemy arrived. She stood in the command center of Bastion Station, the new human military headquarters, and looked at the tactical display showing the incoming fleet. 150 ships. More than they had ever faced. More than she had thought the Cathari could gather. "They brought everything," Marcus said from beside her. His wild hair had touches of gray now, and there were new lines around his eyes. 3 years of building impossible things had taken their toll, but his smile was still the same. "I suppose we should feel honored." "Can we stop them?" Alina asked. "Stop them?" Marcus laughed. "Alina, we are going to embarrass them." He touched a control, and the display changed. Ships appeared, human ships, emerging from hidden positions throughout the system. Alina counted them as they appeared. 17 vessels. 17 patchwork nightmares, each one unique, each one impossible. 3 years of building and learning and improving had created a fleet that defied description. The resilience was a heavy cruiser built from the hulls of captured Cathari ships. Their own technology turned against them with human modifications. The Stubborn was a carrier that launched fighters made from a dozen different species designs. The Beautiful Mistake was a destroyer that used Oorani crystal technology to predict enemy movements before they happened. And at the center of the formation, leading them all, was the Patchwork. The original. The legend. Upgraded and improved, but still recognizable, still the ugly, beautiful ship that had changed everything. 17 ships against 150, Alina said. "Those are not good numbers. They're excellent numbers," Marcus replied. "Because they think they know what they are facing. They have spent 3 years studying our technology, running simulations, developing counter-tactics." He grinned. "They think they have figured us out," Lena understood. "But we have not been standing still. We never stand still. That is the point they keep missing." The Cathari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Haven system. Warlord Sithrak looked at the human fleet waiting for them and felt satisfaction. 17 ships. The humans had only built 17 of their strange hybrid vessels in 3 years. Against his 150, they were nothing. Then he looked closer at the ship leading the human formation, and his satisfaction turned to ash in his mouth. It was massive. Bigger than anything he had ever seen. Bigger than his flagship. Bigger than anything the Cathari had ever built. And its hull was familiar in a way that made his blood run cold. "Warlord," his sensor officer said, his voice shaking. "That ship, it is made from our dreadnoughts. The ones we lost at Haven, they kept the wreckage. They built something from our dead." Sithrak stared at the monster facing him. The humans had taken his destroyed ships, the symbols of his greatest shame, and transformed them into a weapon. They had not just defeated him 3 years ago. They had turned his defeat into their victory, just recycling his broken warships into something new and terrible. Alina Vasquez opened a channel. "Warlord Sithrak, it has been a long time, you dare," Sithrak began. "Kept your ships," Alina interrupted. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. "We thought it would be rude to waste them. Thank you for the gift. The hull plating was particularly useful." She paused. "You can still leave. Take your fleet and go. We do not want this fight. But if you attack our people again, we will finish what we started." Sithrak's vision went red with rage, insulted, mocked, by these primitive creatures who laid with garbage and called themselves builders. He would not run again. He would not be humiliated again. "All ships," he commanded. "Attack." 150 Cathari vessels surged forward. weapons charging, ready to destroy the human fleet and everyone behind it. The Battle of Haven, as it would later be called, lasted for hours. Historians would study it for centuries, trying to understand how 17 ships could defeat 150. The answer was simple and complicated at the same time. Every human ship fought differently, because every human ship was different. The Kethari had tactics designed to counter the patchwork. They had developed weapons to penetrate its rotating shields. They had programmed their computers to track its unpredictable movements. And all of those preparations meant nothing against the Resilience, which used completely different systems. Or the Stubborn, whose fighters swarmed like insects and struck from angles that capital ship weapons could not track. Or the Beautiful Mistake, which seemed to know where Kethari's shots would land before they were fired. The human fleet did not fight as a unit. It fought as 17 individual nightmares, each one requiring different tactics to counter, each one covering the weaknesses of the others. The Kethari computers, designed to analyze and predict enemy patterns, found no patterns to analyze. Every time they adapted to one threat, another threat appeared. Every time they focused on one ship, 3 others would strike from unexpected directions, and leading them all. The patchwork danced through the chaos like it had been born there. It had been upgraded with 3 years of improvements. Its shields were stronger. Its weapons were deadlier. Its crew had trained for this moment every single day. Warlord Sithrak watched his fleet die around him and felt something beyond fear, beyond rage. He felt the death of everything he had believed about the universe. The strong did not always win. The many did not always defeat the few. Power was not just about numbers and firepower. Power was about creativity, adaptation. The willingness to try what others said was impossible. Warlord, his communications officer, said quietly, "We have lost over 100 ships. The fleet is breaking. They are running." Sithrak closed his eyes. "Can we win?" "No, Warlord. We cannot." The undying wrath shuddered as something hit its shields. Then again? Then again? Sithrak opened his eyes and saw the patchwork approaching, weapons glowing, ready to deliver the final blow. He could die here. It would be honorable, in a way. Better than the shame of surrender. But his people would die with him. The crews of his remaining ships, the warriors who had followed him into this disaster, they would all burn because of his pride. "Open a channel," he said. To the human commander, Lena's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired but triumphant. "Commander Vasquez," Sithrak said, and the words tasted like poison. "I surrender. The Kethari Dominion surrenders. We will accept whatever terms you demand." Lena was quiet for a long moment. "You attacked our people twice. You tried to enslave us. You would have killed millions. Yes, and now you expect mercy." Sithrak had no answer. He did not expect mercy. He did not deserve mercy. Alina surprised him. "We are not you," she said. "We do not enslave. We do not conquer. But this is your last chance, Warlord. If the Kethari ever threaten our people again, we will not accept surrender. We will end you completely. Do you understand?" "I understand." The surviving Kethari fleet withdrew. They had come with 150 ships. They left with 38. Humanity had lost 2 ships. 2 ships against over 100 destroyed or captured. The Galactic Concord convened an emergency session to discuss what they called the human question. No one was laughing anymore. No one was making jokes about primitive species or garbage technology. They were too busy being terrified. High Auditor Vexton addressed the assembly. He had become humanity's strongest advocate among the established powers. A Threxian who had seen the impossible and chosen to embrace it. "For 10,000 years, he said, we have perfected our technologies. We have followed doctrine. We have done what we were told was right and possible, and we have thrown away everything that did not fit our understanding." He brought up an image of the human fleet, 17 impossible ships floating among the wreckage of an empire's ambition. "The humans taught us something we forgot. They taught us that impossible is just a word, that rules exist to be questioned, that the greatest strength is not power or numbers, but the willingness to try what no one else will try. Ambassador Sarah Chen rose to address the assembly one final time. She looked around at the representatives of 100 civilizations, ancient and powerful and afraid. "You called us primitive," she said. "You called us young. You gave us scraps and expected us to fail? But we did not fail. We took what you threw away and built something new, something you could not imagine, something that proved you were wrong about us." She smiled, and the smile was not threatening. It was an invitation. "Now imagine what we could build together. Imagine what we could achieve if we stopped throwing things away and started combining them. Imagine what the galaxy could become if we stopped following the old rules and started making new ones." She spread her arms wide. "The universe is infinite. The possibilities are endless. All we have to do is stop saying something is impossible just because it has never been done." The assembly was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the Owarni speaker began to glow with approval. The Threxian High Council nodded their heavy heads. Even the Velkari trademasters clicked their agreement. The galaxy had spent 10,000 years being afraid of change. The humans had shown them they did not need to be afraid. The future was a junkyard full of possibilities, and humanity had just proven that they knew exactly what to do with it. High above Haven Colony, the Patchwork hung in orbit among its sister ships, ugly, impossible, victorious, a monument to what happens when you give dreamers garbage and tell them to survive, Commander. Alina Vasquez stood at the observation window and looked out at the stars. Marcus was already talking about new designs, new combinations, new impossible things to build. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see what humans would do next. Alina smiled. They were just getting started.